All right, today we're going to dig into Executive Order 14-2019. This thing is a pretty big deal. It's basically a plan to completely overhaul how federal regulations get made, how they're enforced, and even how they get taken off the books. Think of it as a blueprint for a massive shift in the way the government works.
And this order, well, it does not pull any punches. Right there in Section 1, it declares its mission is to start the deconstruction of the overbearing and burdensome administrative state. Whoa. I mean, that's not just some minor adjustment, right? That is a huge foundational statement about what it's trying to do.
So you're probably wondering, how are they going to pull this off? Well, here's how we're going to break it down for you. We'll look at the new mission, the why behind it, this wild 60-day review process it kicks off, how it completely changes enforcement, and finally, we'll see who's actually running the show here.
Okay, let's start with the big picture. What's the core policy really driving this whole thing?
If you read the order itself, it really boils down to two main goals. First, it wants to focus enforcement only on regulations that are clearly and explicitly authorized by laws passed by Congress, and second, it aims to restore the constitutional separation of powers. Both of these goals, according to the document, are all about fighting back against what it calls federal overreach.
And that really brings us to the big why behind all of this. It all comes back to that powerful phrase we saw right at the beginning: deconstructing the administrative state.
So, the way the order frames it, this whole deconstruction idea is the main strategy. It's how they plan to stop what they see as federal overreach and get that balance of power back between the different branches of government. They're basically saying this is a top priority for the administration.
Okay, so we've got the what and the why. But what about the how? How does this order actually make it happen? Well, it all kicks off with a super fast, really broad review of pretty much all the existing rules.
And when I say fast, I mean incredibly fast. The timeline here is just wild. Agency heads get only 60 days to go through every single regulation they're responsible for. That is a blistering pace for what could be a gigantic task.
Now, even though it's fast, the process is supposed to be really methodical. Here's how it works. First, each agency sifts through its own rules, looking for specific types of regulations to target. Then, they send their lists to a central office called OIRA. And it's OIRA's job to take all those lists and create one big unified game plan for changing or just getting rid of the rules that were flagged.
So you're probably asking, what exactly are they looking for? Well, the list of targeted regulations is pretty broad. They're going after rules they see as unconstitutional or ones based on an illegal delegation of power. But it's also about economics. They're targeting rules where the costs are seen to outweigh the benefits, or rules that are holding back new technology, hurting economic growth, or putting too much of a burden on small businesses.
But listen, this order is about more than just cleaning house and reviewing old rules. It's also trying to fundamentally change how the government enforces rules right now and how it makes new ones from this point forward.
And this is where things get really interesting. The order tells agencies to actually deprioritize enforcing any rule that isn't based on what it calls the best reading of a statute. And it doesn't stop there. It also tells them to look at ongoing enforcement cases and maybe even terminate them if they don't meet this new standard. I mean, you can imagine, that could have some immediate, real-world effects.
And to make sure this isn't just a one-time thing, the order takes that same 7-point checklist and applies it to all new regulations going forward. So the same thinking that's driving this big 60-day review is supposed to become a permanent fixture in how all future rules get made.
Okay, but a plan is only as good as the people running it, right? So who is actually in charge of making all this happen? The order sets up a few key roles you need to know about.
First up, there's a brand new position, the DOGE Team Lead. And yes, that stands for Department of Government Efficiency. Every agency is going to have one. Their whole job is to spearhead this review process inside their own department. They're the main point person for the whole initiative.
And then you've got OIRA. That's the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. You can kind of think of OIRA as the central command center for all of us. It's where all the lists from all the different agencies end up. Then it's their job to work with those agencies to create that big master plan we talked about, the unified regulatory agenda that decides what actually gets changed or completely scrapped.
So let's pull it all together.
What we're seeing here is that Executive Order 14219 isn't just some vague statement of ideas. No, it's a very detailed blueprint. It's got a systematic process, a super tight deadline, specific things to look for, and a clear chain of command. It's all designed from the ground up to completely reevaluate and reshape the entire federal regulatory landscape.
So this order sets up a whole new way of looking at federal rules. But, so much of it really seems to hang on that one key phrase about enforcement. What does it actually mean in the real world to enforce only the best reading of a statute? I think the answer to that question, well, that's what's going to determine the true impact of this entire thing.